She was just a nurse walking home in the rain. Moments later, a black SUV with no plates tore through the dark and opened fire. A man collapsed, bleeding, at a bus stop. Leah Carter didn't run. She threw herself over the stranger's body and took the bullet herself. But when she woke up in the ICU, he was gone. No ID, no trace, no report. Days later, a convoy of soldiers surrounded her house. What they told her next would shatter everything she thought she knew, and reveal that her instinctive act of compassion had quietly saved hundreds of lives. The rain had started as a whisper, barely more than mist, clinging to the streetlights and curling like smoke over the blacktop. Leah Carter, 32, walked the shoulder of the country road the way she always did after her shift, head down, bag slung over one shoulder, badge still clipped to her scrubs. It was nearly 2 a.m., and the quiet stretched for miles, broken only by the occasional croak of frogs and the low hum of crickets in the trees. Just ahead, the flicker of the town bus stop's dying neon light pulsed against the wet pavement like a fading heartbeat. She almost missed him. The figure slumped near the bench, motionless, half in the shadows. Her steps slowed. At first, she thought it was a pile of clothes left behind, or maybe a drunk passed out in the storm. But then the shape moved. Barely. A twitch. A hand. A low groan. She dropped her bag instantly. "Sir?" she called out, already jogging, shoes slapping waterlogged asphalt. "Sir, can you hear me?" The man lifted his head, but only slightly. Older. White hair soaked against his scalp. His jacket, heavy, faded, unmistakably military, clung to his frame. Blood was blooming beneath his side like ink and water. Too much, too fast. Her nurse's instincts took over. She knelt beside him, reaching for his pulse. "Stay with me, okay? I'm a nurse. I've got you." Then she heard it. Tires. Too fast. Too close. A black SUV cut through the road like a bullet itself. Engine low and deliberate. No headlights. No plates. It wasn't slowing down. It wasn't even pretending to. She looked up, and in that instant, time collapsed. There was no plan, no calculation, just action. Leah spun, her arms going around the man's chest, her body folding over his just as the first shot rang out. The sound cracked the air wide open. A searing burn lit up her side, hot and sharp, and then her knees gave way beneath her. She collapsed over him, blood from both of them now mixing with the rain. The SUV didn't stop. It disappeared into the dark like a shadow retreating from the light. And then, silence. Leah Carter lay bleeding on the pavement, her breath shallow, her vision tunneling. But the man beneath her was still breathing, and that was all that mattered. The first thing Leah Carter felt was weight, not on her, but inside her. A dull, aching pressure just beneath her ribs, like someone had buried heat and metal deep in her side. Then came the hum of machines, the antiseptic sting in the air, the soft beeping of a monitor that confirmed what her slow heartbeat hadn't yet told her. She was alive. Her eyes fluttered open to a pale ceiling and the blurry silhouette of a nurse adjusting an IV line. Someone noticed. A voice called her name. Then another. "You're in the ICU, Leah," said a calm, practiced voice. "You were shot, but you're stable now. You're safe." Safe. The word didn't land right. Safe meant over. Finished. But nothing about the memory felt finished. She blinked slowly, each breath a thread pulled through pain. Then it hit her, hard and sudden. The man at the bus stop, the blood, the SUV. Her body curling around his, her voice rasped before she could stop it. The man. Where is he? The nurse paused, exchanging a quick glance with the attending physician beside her. "What man?" the doctor asked. "The man I covered. He was bleeding. He was hurt. I covered him when the shots—" "You were the only one found at the scene, Leah," the doctor said gently. "There was no one else. Police combed the area. EMTs swept the lot. No second victim, no trace, just you." Her throat tightened. That wasn't possible. She remembered him, not in flashes, not as a dream, but in detail, the weight of his torso beneath hers, the warmth of his blood soaking through both their clothes, and most of all, his eyes. They weren't wild, they weren't scared, they were steady. Military. That was the word that anchored her. Military. He hadn't looked at her like a man dying. He looked at her like a man evaluating, registering her face, her actions, not with fear, but with something almost like respect. As if he'd seen this before, in another place, in another war, as if he couldn't believe someone else was doing it now, for him. And then he was gone. Erased. But Leah knew what she had felt. And even through the morphine haze and the quiet hum of recovery, she knew one thing for certain. She hadn't imagined him. Someone had taken him, and someone didn't want her to remember. The flowers came first, lilies in a glass vase, scent too strong for a hospital room. No card, then a bag of homemade cookies from a neighbor she hadn't seen in years. A few colleagues dropped by, some awkward jokes, some hugs. Most just stared at the bandage on her side and offered soft admiration like they didn't quite know what to say to someone who'd stopped a bullet. Leah smiled, nodded, played the part of the quiet hero because that's what they needed her to be. But she couldn't shake the feeling. Something was off. It was in the way the new orderly walked, back too straight, arms too controlled. He never made eye contact, never asked if she needed water or adjusted the bed. Just stood there near the door, pretending to scan vitals, pretending to belong. Leah had been a nurse long enough to know who worked where, and this man wasn't staff. Then there was the envelope. It wasn't there when she fell asleep. It wasn't delivered with the mail. It simply appeared, flat, unmarked, resting gently on her meal tray when she woke up. Her name was handwritten on the front in precise, blocky letters. Inside, a single sheet of paper, folded once. "You didn't just save me. You saved a mission. No one can know." No signature, no explanation, just that. Her pulse spiked. She read it again, then again. The writing was clean, intentional, like a soldier's. Her fingers trembled as she refolded the note and slid it beneath her pillow. That night, long after the lights dimmed and the hallway grew quiet, Leah turned on her side and felt something sharp beneath her. She reached under the pillow, half expecting to find the note had shifted. But it wasn't paper, it was metal, an old scratched dog tag. The chain cold against her skin, the tag dull and battered with age. But the emblem, stamped into the steel, was unmistakable. The eagle, anchor, trident, Navy SEAL. Her breath caught. No one mentioned it. No nurse admitted leaving it. And when she asked about the orderly again the next morning, the charge nurse simply said, "We don't have anyone on rotation by that name." Leah wasn't paranoid. Not yet. But something was happening behind the scenes. Something they didn't want her to understand. And someone, somewhere, was still watching. It was a Tuesday when Dr. Edwin Marsh came by her room, though Leah had lost track of days. He was older, late 50s maybe, with a stiff gait and a voice like worn gravel. Most nurses knew he kept to himself, spoke in clipped sentences and never lingered. But that morning, he closed the door behind him before he spoke. "I heard about the envelope," he said quietly, not meeting her eyes. Leah sat up a little straighter. "You know who left it?" He shook his head. No, but I know what it means. Something in his tone made her stomach tighten. Marsh didn't believe in small talk. He wouldn't be here unless he had a reason. I did a tour in Mosul, he said. Saw some strange things over there, things that didn't make the papers. He finally looked at her then. I also did some contract work after. Quiet assignments. No records. No questions. You learn to recognize the smell of a cover-up. Leah didn't speak. She didn't need to. No police interview, Marsh continued. No detectives stopping by to get a statement. Not even a mention on the local news. And a nurse getting shot in the parking lot of the only hospital in town should have made the front page. She had thought it too. But hearing someone else say it aloud made it real. Heavy. I checked, he went on, lowering his voice. There's no report on the SUV, no traffic camera footage, nothing. It's like it never existed, which means someone powerful made it disappear. Fast. Leah felt her breath catch. You think the man I saved was involved in something? Marsh nodded slowly. He wasn't just involved. He was the reason it happened. You didn't walk into a random shooting, Leah. You walked into an operation. And from the way they're erasing the edges, I'd bet he was someone carrying something. Information, intel, maybe both. And now they're making sure no one connects the dots. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. And me? Marsh hesitated. They'll keep you safe. But don't mistake protection for freedom. You're part of the story now, and stories like this, they don't end with a discharge and a thank you card. He turned for the door, paused, then added, Be careful who you talk to. There's a war no one sees, and you just got drafted. And then he was gone, and Leah was left alone with the weight of a truth no one would admit. Leah Carter stepped onto her porch with a paper bag of medications in one hand and a folded discharge sheet in the other. The screen door creaked shut behind her. It was late, sun just having slipped beneath the trees, casting a soft orange haze across the fields that surrounded her home like a quiet shield. The place hadn't changed in the week she'd been gone. Same chipped paint on the railing. Same wind chimes gently tapping in the breeze. Same dent in the porch step where her father used to rest his boot after long shifts at the mill. But Leah had changed. She could feel it in the way she moved. More cautious, more aware. She placed the paper bag on the kitchen table and turned off the porch light. Just habit. But as the last glow of the sunset bled into the sky, she paused. The silence felt wrong. Not peaceful, hollow, like the calm that settles over a field before a storm moves in. No frogs, no birds, no night sounds at all. Then she saw it. Headlights. Not one, not a car, 6. 6 sets of headlights cutting through the tree line, steady, slow, methodical. She stepped onto the porch, heart thudding hard in her chest. The engines didn't roar. They purred, low and even, almost reverent, as the convoy rolled to a stop along the gravel road in front of her property. Military Humvees, all of them black, unmarked, tires crunching against stone. And then the doors opened. Not rushed, not panicked, just precise. Soldiers emerged in formation, boots touched down in perfect rhythm. No shouting, no commands, no weapons drawn. Just men and women in uniform moving with quiet intent. Their faces were unreadable. Their presence was undeniable. Leah didn't move. She didn't breathe. They weren't here to intimidate. But they weren't here by accident either. In the soft dark, beneath the hum of crickets slowly returning to life, Leah stood barefoot on her porch while a convoy of America's finest silently surrounded her home. No one spoke. Not yet. because whatever this was, it didn't need words. Not yet. The knock on the door was soft. Not tentative, not timid, just deliberate. Like someone who knew he'd be let in. Leah opened it slowly. He stood on her porch, tall and broad, shoulders squared under a weathered Army service uniform that didn't need introduction. His face was lined but composed, his presence somehow both quiet and unshakable. He removed his cap with one hand, his gaze level and respectful. "Miss Carter," he said, voice low and steady. "May I come in?" She didn't ask who he was. Somehow, she already knew. She stepped aside and gestured him in. He moved carefully, like a man used to making every action count. They sat at her kitchen table, an old oak surface scarred by time, warmed by memory. Leah poured 2 cups of coffee, black, the only way her father ever kept it, and slid one toward him. He nodded once in thanks. "My name is Colonel Reuben Hayes, U.S. Army Intelligence. Retired, technically." She waited. No small talk, no delay. He wrapped both hands around the mug, then spoke. "The man you shielded in that parking lot was not a civilian. His name is Chief Petty Officer Samuel Denton. Call sign Hawk, retired Navy SEAL. Decorations classified, missions buried deeper. But make no mistake, he's one of the best we ever had." Leah didn't blink. "He was moving something," the colonel continued. "Information. Not on a drive, not on paper, in his head. Embedded memory. One of the last field couriers we trust. He'd spent 9 days inside a domestic extremist cell. Names, targets, logistics, all of it memorized. No files, no trail." "Why no backup?" she asked. Hayes met her eyes. "He refused it, said extraction teams would draw attention, said he'd make it out like a civilian, unmarked jacket, old boots, walked 2 states on foot, buses, whatever he could blend into. He was almost home when someone leaked his location." Her chest tightened. "And I was in the way," she said. "No," Hayes replied gently. "You weren't in the way. You were the reason he lived." He paused, then reached into the inside of his coat and pulled out a sealed envelope. A wax stamp held the flap closed. Military, not ceremonial. "He left this for you. Said you deserved the truth, even if the rest stays in shadow." Leah took the envelope with both hands. It was heavier than paper had any right to be. In that moment, the silence between them said more than any metal ever could. Colonel Hayes sat back in the kitchen chair, his coffee untouched, cooling beside him. His eyes hadn't left Leah's since he placed the envelope in her hands. She hadn't opened it yet. Maybe she was afraid to. Maybe some truths weighed heavier unopened. He cleared his throat softly. "You didn't just save a man, Miss Carter. You shifted the course of an operation we'd spent months preparing for." He spoke carefully, every word measured, as if even now he was deciding what he could tell her. Denton had intel, real-time intel, on a coordinated domestic attack set to unfold within 72 hours. 3 locations, civilian targets, mass casualties. He memorized everything to avoid leaks, no devices, no papers, just him. Leah gripped the edge of the table. "So when I got between him and that bullet—" "You bought him time," Hayes said, nodding. "Just enough. While the gunman was focused on you, Denton made it to cover. He disappeared off the grid, exactly as he was trained to, and because of that window, we extracted him, decrypted his intel, and shut down all 3 targets." She stared down at her hands. How many people would have— 419, minimum, he said quietly. "That's the current estimate. Could have been more, a lot more." Leah didn't answer. Her throat felt thick. The number floated in the air like smoke. 400 lives hanging in the balance of a choice she'd made in under a second. Colonel Hayes reached into his coat once more. This time, what he placed on the table was smaller. A cloth-wrapped bundle, folded with precision. He unfolded it with the kind of care people reserve for sacred things. Inside was a patch, simple, dark, embroidered with the insignia of the Navy SEALs. Below it, a challenge coin, deep black metal, etched with the SEAL trident on one side. On the other, 4 words engraved into the steel: "For courage, unseen, Denton." "He doesn't give these out," Hayes said. "Ever. This one's his personal issue. Only one of its kind." Leah ran her fingers over the coin's edge. It was warm from his hand, but still felt cold in hers, heavy. She didn't speak, she couldn't. So Hayes did. "You changed the mission, you changed everything. And the ones who lived, they'll never know your name. But we do, and we don't forget." Then he stood, straightened his coat, and left the room without another word. Leah sat alone in the quiet that followed, holding a patch, a coin, and a truth no one else would ever see. The morning broke slow and golden, the kind of light that slid gently through the curtains instead of barging in. Leah stirred before her alarm, though she hadn't set one. Sleep had been light, uneasy, broken by memories that weren't hers and silence that felt too loud. She sat on the edge of her bed, still in the flannel pants and hoodie she'd worn to sleep. The envelope from the night before resting on her nightstand, still sealed. The challenge coin and patch sat beside it like sentinels, quiet and unmoving. A part of her thought maybe it had all ended there, with the envelope, the coin, the quiet goodbye from a man in uniform. But when she pulled back the curtain, breath caught in her chest. They hadn't left. The convoy was still there. 6 black Humvees lined the gravel road in front of her house, just as they had the night before. But now, the soldiers were no longer hidden inside. They stood in formation, boots planted firmly in the wet grass of her front yard, posture rigid, uniforms pressed. No words, no movement, just presence, 12 of them. And at the center, stepping forward with quiet command, was the man she hadn't seen clearly until now. Chief Petty Officer Samuel Denton. He wore his uniform like it was grown into him, effortless, absolute. His right arm was in a sling, the fabric dark against his chest. But he moved with the certainty of someone who'd learned long ago how to lead with whatever strength he had left. He stopped 5 feet from her porch, eyes locked on hers. For a moment, no one breathed. Then, at exactly 0700 hours, as the sun crested the pine trees behind her house, the soldiers snapped to attention in perfect unison. The sound of boots striking earth echoed like a drumbeat. Leah stepped onto her porch barefoot, heart pounding. Chief Denton raised his uninjured arm in a solemn salute. One by one, the rest followed. No medals, no speeches, just silence and respect. The kind of moment you don't prepare for, the kind that prepares you. The air held a different weight now, like the world itself had slowed to let this moment stretch a little longer. There were no sirens, no press vans, no television cameras jockeying for a shot. Just soldiers, still as statues, and Leah Carter standing barefoot on her porch, heart thudding in her chest like it was echoing off the hills behind her. The town had started to gather without being called. A few neighbors stood at the fence line, still in pajamas and work boots, eyes wide. An old pickup slowed to a stop at the curve. A child peeked out from behind his mother's coat. No one spoke. No one needed to. Chief Denton stepped forward alone, cradling something in his good arm. His face bore no smile, no grand display, just quiet reverence. He climbed the steps of the porch slowly, his boots brushing the wood where Leah used to set out flower pots in spring. When he reached her, he met her gaze with the kind of eyes that had seen too much and still chose to see her. "I don't have the right words," he said, voice low but unwavering. "So, I brought you something better." He unwrapped the bundle in his arm with care, cloth against cloth, then placed it in her hands. A folded American flag. It was worn, the colors a little sun-faded at the seams. Real, not ceremonial. "This flag flew over our forward post," he said. "The one I made it back to. The one that still stands because of you." Leah stared down at it, fingers trembling slightly as they held its corners. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, dark, and heavy. A challenge coin, different from the one left at her bedside. This one bore an eagle's wing across the back, etched with coordinates. The place where the mission ended. He placed it in her hand. "For bravery," he said, "and compassion." He stepped back, and in the next breath, 12 soldiers raised their hands in perfect unison. The kind of salute you don't practice, the kind you earn. It held. Longer than expected. Longer than tradition. And when it dropped, no applause came. No chants. No anthems. Only silence. Because sometimes the truest respect doesn't make a sound. The story never made the news. Not the shooting, not the convoy, not the salute. There were no headlines, no interviews, no viral video to mark what happened on that stretch of gravel road outside Leah Carter's house. And maybe that was the point. The world kept spinning. The local paper ran a piece about new zoning regulations. The hospital quietly filled her shifts with someone else. Life moved on the way it always does. Fast, indifferent, unaware. But inside Leah's small living room, on the top shelf of an old wooden bookcase her father built decades ago, sat a box that made no sound but carried all the weight in the world. It wasn't fancy, just oak, sanded down, stained the color of coffee. A soft latch held it closed, the kind that clicks once and trusts you'll remember what's inside. She opened it once a day, not out of vanity or nostalgia, just to remind herself. Inside was her nurse's badge, bent, blood-stained, the metal chipped where it had caught pavement. A folded flag, edges crisp, fabric heavy with stories she'd never hear. And the challenge coin resting in the center like a secret only a few people on Earth understood. The engraving caught the light sometimes when the sun came through the window just right. For courage unseen. She didn't feel like a hero, never had. She didn't save Denton because she knew who he was. She didn't throw herself in front of a bullet because of the country or code. She did it because someone was bleeding, alone, dying, and she was raised to help, raised to act, raised to do the right thing even if no one was watching. Especially then. Some nights, when the wind rustled through the pine trees outside and the world felt a little too hollow, she'd sit on the porch with a blanket over her knees and think about what had almost happened. About the people who had lived because of a second's decision. About Denton, about the silence that followed. Her father's words came back then, not like memory, but like scripture. "Right is still right," he used to say, "even if you're the only one doing it." And Leah Carter had done it. The world would never know, but it was better because she had.